my gaming edge.
Hi, this is Kalkin from Check6TF2, and today I'm going to go over my mid-fights from our snakewater game versus Blight Gaming, aka Makes Sense. Now the goal of this video is to try and give you some insight into how I personally play mids, as well as how to react to what the other team is doing and make changes accordingly. So going into this first mid-fight, I have no previous experience from other mid-fights, so what I'm going to do is go with my generic strategy, which is to ignore the demo men and focus on keeping the soldiers as much damaged as possible and unable to jump. In general, on snakewater mid, as a demo man, your job is to focus on the other team's heavy and keep outputting as much damage as possible onto them. So, let's see what happens.
Medic! Oh! Ow! Oh!
I managed to get good damage out on their soldiers, but was unfortunately flanked by a scout due to an unwatched right side, which leads to me going down. The mid-fight went on long enough to allow me to respawn and attempt to get back into the fight, which I do, and I get some good damage out, but my team was down on numbers, so we fell out and regrouped on 2 successfully. Not a complete loss, we still have our medic alive and our demo man up. So for the next round, we're going to try and do the same thing. With mid-fights in TF2, a good rule of thumb to have is what I call the rule of 2. If you try a strategy and it doesn't work once, then that one time it could have maybe just been a fluke. People weren't aiming properly, one person managed to die early, or for example, my getting flanked and going down early. But if it doesn't work twice, then it probably wasn't a fluke and something should be changed, even if it's just a subtle change. So for the next mid-fight, we're going to try and run the same strategy with a scout watching right this time so I don't go down early, and see if it works. Now this round I screw up my jump to mid, which is kind of embarrassing, but thankfully that's not a big deal on snakewater, but a poor mistake either way. I focus solely on trying to do damage to the soldiers again as they come out, and I do manage to get some decent damage on their combo, but unfortunately our team's combo took too much damage from their demo man and was called to get out of the fight. I do the same, and I get out successfully trapping a soldier through window along the way, but our combo doesn't. Now this is the second round we've lost in a row in a mid-fight, so we definitely need to change something up this time. After talking to my team between rounds, my soldiers had commented that their demo man was getting too much damage on them early, which was forcing them to play passively and get healed. So what I changed in the next mid-fight is I'm going to try and damage Sweater as much as possible to keep him back and give my combo some breathing room.
Medic! Ow! Oh! Come on, man! Ah!
Now, we lost this fight, but I did manage to get out successfully with our medic, which doesn't make it a complete loss. Unfortunately for myself, I'd eaten a direct nade and had to fall back to the health kit in the middle of the fight, which gave the other team the position they needed to win mid. Now, I don't think that the change to focus the demo early was a bad call, and I did try and do it. I just took too much damage in the process. So in the next round, I'm going to try it again, see if it was a fluke or not, and see how it goes.
Medic! Oh! Medic! Ow! Where the dirt?
Now this time I damaged the demo early successfully without taking too much damage myself and managed to keep damage on the second soldier. One of their scouts tries to suicide, but since our team wasn't as damaged from the demo initially, and one of their soldiers was tied up from sticky damage, he didn't have as much support and got picked off pretty easily, and that allowed us to push back across the point and finish the fight with a numbers advantage. Now, for the next round, Valen had made a comment that he noticed their scout had gone top right the past couple rounds in a row. So what I'm going to try and do in response to that is I'm going to try and send a blind sticky top right and attempt to put out some damage on that scout, and then switch back to my normal roll of damage to the demo man and the soldiers.
Medic! Ah! Dankeschön. Ah! Play ball! Ah!
Now, this ends up working out, and I get some damage on the scout when he falls back into the sticky, which forces him to play a little more passively, and then I manage to switch in time and focus on the soldiers dealing damage to them. So their team is forced to fall back, and I manage to get good damage on them as they're falling out through pipe spam. So this round it worked out pretty well, so next round I'm going to try the same thing with the blind sticky on top right on the scout.
Ow! Oh! Freedom! Ah!
This round I attempt the same thing on the scout on the top right, but I screw up my sticky placement pretty horribly, and I was late in switching to the soldiers, so I was unable to put damage on them this time, so both their soldiers are going to jump top. And I spent a lot of time having to spam them down. At that point, both teams were pretty damaged, and I tried to coordinate with even sure shot to damage them behind the shack. And I did end up getting good damage on them, but it failed because I stayed in that fight too long and ended up dying to help my medic escape. Now this round I played too close to the point, and I made the mistake here of pushing too far over when my team was too lit to do anything themselves. It was a great idea to try and help my team with their bombs, but by pushing up like I did across the point, I overextended myself and my medic who was lucky to survive. What I should have done was use my team's bombs as a distraction to get out of the fight safely alive with my medic, and then regroup with my pocket soldier to hold second. So for the next round, what I'm going to do is I'm going to ignore the scout top right and go back to focusing on damaging Sweater and the soldiers early, since this round I was unable to get damage on them because I was distracted with the scout top right. And myself and my team decide they're going to play a little further back and avoid that mistake of pushing up too far on point too early when we don't really have the numbers or health to do so.
Medic! Ow! Ah! Ah!
time has been added. Time has been added.
Kaboom!
Now this ends up working out pretty well. I missed Sweater the first 2 times with stickies, but either way I kept him tied up from doing damage to my combo as they came out. And I also managed to keep their soldier on check, 2 damage to jump. Now since my team was playing a little more passively, we were hoping that one of their soldiers or one of their scouts would overextend into us. So one of the soldiers ends up doing this and he jumps in, and since we're all pretty good on health and pretty close together, we focus him down relatively easily. And we can then use that as an advantage to push and take position on the point properly this time, instead of doing it when we're all lit and we don't really have a numerical advantage. So this time we wipe their team and we win the round pretty handily. Now, hopefully you learned something from this video and learned to play maybe a little more reactively to the other team and help diagnose what problems are going wrong. And then you can use those to fix your next mid fights. You gotta keep in mind that when you're playing this game, you have to play very dynamically and you have to play very reactively to what other teams are doing and to what's not working well for your own team.